So, Louise, she's a certified dementia practitioner and a life coach. She retired from a 25-year psychotherapy practice in Modesto, California, and she currently works with seniors in Manatee and Sarasota counties. She teaches lifelong learning at the Ringling College and at Sarasota schools. She is a community educator. She runs the support groups for the Alzheimer's Association. Additionally, she volunteers with AARP, and she's part of a team that's instrumental in developing Dementia Care and Cure, the initiative in Manatee County to educate businesses, clubs, groups, and organizations. She's appeared on TV, radio, and in local magazines. She has a master's degree in counseling from California State University, Fullerton. Ah, that's another thing I forgot. Quiet our phones. Thanks for the reminder.
My car warranty is expired.
Okay, and she also attended USC and the University of the Pacific for her doctoral work in counseling. Her interests are positive aging and later life transitions. She really likes to work with people, with seniors, and to help improve their quality of life. So now I bring to you Louise Gallagher.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm actually very honored since this is the population I love. I'm a part of them, so it's a good thing I do. At any rate, we're going to talk a little bit about a few things today. Mostly we're going to talk about later life transitions. We're going to talk about coping and what we call positive or resilient aging, and we'll wrap up with that. And hopefully by the end of today, you'll find out some things for yourself that as you move forward on your journey through life that may help you and perhaps even others that you know. And let's see, here. Got to get used to this. Okay, so here we all are going through life. And of course, we all have baggage that goes along, which are experiences that we've all had, which has developed our character. Some of us would rather not have some of that character development after what we've had to live through, but we get it anyway, right? But when you think about the word transitions, what comes to mind for you? How does that word feel to you? And why do you think transitions are important in life? We've got to deal with them anyway, but why would they be important to us? So I want you to take a moment right now, and I want you to think back to your childhood days. And I want you to remember what you thought about, what you wanted to do or to be when you grew up. How did you think life was going to be for you as an adult? Did you accomplish what you thought about, what you imagined, and what you wanted to be? And as you have matured and continued on with your life, what's happened to you? Let me be specific. Did you go to college? Did you drop out of college? And if so, why? Did you get married? Did you have children? Were you able to conceive children or not? Did you get divorced? Have you lost one or both of your parents? Most of us have. Have you lost siblings or a sibling? Have you lost a best friend? Have you grieved the death of a child? Are you caring for someone who needs your assistance? Have you taken care of someone who became ill, disabled, and eventually died? You can't hear? How's that? Sorry about that, I apologize. But everybody can hear that okay? Okay, should have checked the speaker though for future reference, thank you. Have you lost a job, or have you had to give up a job that you loved? Have you moved away from friends and family at any time in your life and had to establish yourself in a new community? Have you had to deal with personal health issues yourself? Do you have a disabling condition that impacts your ability to function? Are you estranged from or have you lost contact with someone close to you? Do you wish your life were different than it is? Are you dissatisfied with the life you have? Have you dealt with a near fatal event in your own life? Thinking about all these questions that I just asked, when you were a kid, did you ever think that you would have experienced so many of the things that you have? So many of the tragedies and events, good and bad. So all these are transformations, and of course what they do is they impact us in terms of just our life and coping, but also, as we talked about earlier, that character development, who we are and who we become, based on our responses to those events. You know, change is an inevitable part of life. And one of my favorite sayings is Robert Frost poem. Anybody remember two roads diverged in the yellow woods and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. One of my favorites. Anyway, so now you've all lived long enough to experience a variety of transitions. So now what I'd like for you to do is I want you to think about something that's happened in your life that was very distressing, upsetting, or difficult, a major life challenge. And remember how you felt when you either got the news or it happened. That moment in time. And what did you go through? How did your life change as a result of that episode? And how did you change as a result of what happened to you? Does it feel still as painful as it initially did when it happened? Do you think you're better or worse off today because of that event or experience? And you know, each of us is a book, because each of us has our own life story, things that we go through. We all have chapters in our life. There's a beginning, and the middle is all those chapters, and eventually will come the end. And so what is your story? How do you see your life? How do you see yourself? What does your life story say about you? Now let's shift to the later chapters in the book of your life. What do you find currently difficult or challenging? What are you disappointed in? What are the disadvantages, or what do you dislike about aging? What are some of the good things about the senior years, both from your perspective and the perspective of your friends and family? If you could have the life you wanted right now, what would it look like? What would it be like? And as you look over your own life, how do you feel? Do you feel fulfilled, happy, sad, regret? What is your experience about your life to date? And if you had one wish, what would you do to change your life? What would that wish be? So, moving on to transitions, guess what? Changes are ahead. It's kind of one of those certainties in life. But there's always the rainbow. Never forget the rainbow. So, we have the caution sign, but we have the rainbow, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But you know, it's natural and inevitable that we're going to face change and transitions. We're going to be met with things that were unplanned, maybe inevitable, that we would have to deal with, a loss of friends, a loss of family, our illness in ourselves, illness in somebody very close to us that we have to take care of. And you know, what happens is we lose our sense of balance when we have these episodes, these transitions, especially the very upsetting ones. Even good ones, even like getting married, having a baby. Well, you know, think back, all those sleepless nights, right? And then worrying when they got sick, and then having to cancel things because your child is sick, right? Marriage, adjusting to marriage and living with somebody and their habits and my habits and how I like things and how they like things, and why are they doing it that way anyway? So, trying to retrain them, which never works. But anyway, we always try. So of course we can anticipate some changes that we may have in our life, but many of them we don't plan, and they sometimes come very suddenly and unexpectedly. You could have an accident. Probably most of us have lived long enough to at least have one minor fender bender, right? I mean, so, and those things are upsetting. Run out of gas, flat tire, okay? Those things are inevitable. And of course, they're kind of minor compared to the biggies, but again, how we respond to that is also a setup for how we might respond to those big events. So if we get so upset that we ran out of gas, or we got a flat tire, or whatever, that we missed a doctor's appointment, what are we going to say? I always tell people, save it for the big stuff, okay? You know, the minor stuff, you'll get through it. But anyway, and of course, as I said earlier, they can be good, they can be not so good. So marriage, new house, new job, new place to live, moving to Florida where it's nice and warm in the winter, can be negative. Illness, death, disability, accidents. And these events tend to alter our life because they force us to leave what's familiar, what we're used to, and what we know behind. And we have to adjust, at least temporarily, to a new way of living. What happens is the past no longer exists. Life in the rearview mirror, you might try it for a while, but you can't stay there. It's best, thinking about driving down the road of life, it's best to look out the front windshield rather than the rearview mirror. And if you can stay in the driver's seat in the now, that's even better. So transitions by definition are change. Our past no longer exists, and what we experience is a sense of loss. We feel very vulnerable, we're very emotional. Our whole world is turned upside down, our life is disrupted. But aha, what also happens? It's a time for self-reflection, self-renewal, and establishing a new, kind of like after COVID, right? We're getting to a new norm. COVID is a great example of a transition. Did any of us 2 years ago anticipate or expect that anything like this would have happened in our lifetime? And how long it has happened? Just this summer, around July, when we were all getting ready to exhale and we're thinking it's behind us and people are getting vaccinated, Delta comes along to knock us back down. Got knocked over by a wave again. And the only thing I have to say is, if anything is serious enough, it's likely going to change you. So expect that, anticipate that, and that's good because that's growth, that's movement, that's forward. Not always fun, but as they say, good mariners are not made on calm seas. Or as Albert Einstein says, a ship is always safe ashore, but that was not what it was built for, and neither are we. We're built to live life and to deal with it and to do the best we can. So let's talk a little bit about the stages of transitions. One of the things you know is life is not always predictable. And we don't always choose our circumstances. Sometimes they're thrust upon us and we just have to do the best we can. We have to deal with it. And we often need to leave something or someone behind in the process. And we have to let go and adjust to a new way of thinking, even if we're totally unprepared to do so. William Bridges talks about 3 stages. He's done a lot of work on transitions. Some of you may be familiar with his work. And he talks about the ending, the neutral, and the beginnings. And of course, the first stage is that ending. So life as we knew it is over. So something ends, life changes, and the carpet's been pulled out from underneath us. No longer do we have a sense of predictability in our life. Usually that's one of the first things to go. It's like we don't trust anything. It's like, how could this happen? We're often in that shock state. And we feel it's a very emotional time. We feel a sense of loss. And there's 2 times in our lives where we have a sense, or 2 emotions I might say, where we have a sense of disconnection because we feel so all alone and so vulnerable. And those are in times of significant loss and also in terms of anxiety and fear. And I think the last year has taught us a lot about those two lessons as we've experienced in ourselves, as well as those people around us. No longer is life what it was. No longer, many of us haven't experienced the holidays like we have in maybe 2 years, okay? So that's life, it is what it is. You know, the life changes on a dime. So the next phase that he talks about, which is the big dip here, and this is the hardest time. Usually in that, you know, your mind and your body can only absorb so much shock, right? And what happens is we go a bit numb sometimes, and we kind of don't feel anything. Sometimes we feel like we're on the outside looking in on the world. We have a sense of derealization, we're disconnected. And that's just because everything is just topsy-turvy in our world. That's normal. But in the second phase, in the neutral phase, that's kind of when the dust begins to settle. So if you can imagine just everything being blown up and then everything kind of starts to trickle down and fall to the earth. But the middle phase, the neutral phase, is actually where the healing begins. But you usually feel a range of emotions. And remember, we vacillate in and out of emotions. So one day or one moment may be okay, but the next day we might be having a pity party for an hour, you know, and the tears are going, and you just can't seem to get a hold of yourself or your emotions. But you often feel that sense of loss, a sense of disorientation, very depressed often. You just don't know what to do. The other thing that sometimes happens, and people get a little crazy about this, but I like this. People do what they call cocooning. So this is sort of some of the emotions you go through. And, but what do we do when we cocoon? Well, you can imagine a cocoon is when you just go and you're in your tight little quarters. And what happens is you just retreat, often from the world, from your friends, and people worry about you and they want you to reach out and they're pulling you, and you're saying, no, I'm okay, but I can't deal with it. I'm not ready to be around it. That is a time you need to heal. How many of us have had surgeries or a severe illness? We don't go out partying when we feel that way, right? We can't. We got to heal. We got to take time for ourselves. And cocooning is a part of the process of just disengaging sometimes just because you're not up for it, you're not ready for it, and you don't feel you're equipped quite yet to do it. Now, I would discourage you from not listening and talking to anybody, but you might feel not as engaged at that point. You just need to heal. And you might need to do a lot of emoting, just letting go, talking out your feelings, crying out your feelings, screaming out your feelings. Those are all normal, and that's okay. I always tell people, it's a time you reflect. What did I do wrong? Should I have done something different? Why did I let him go there? Why did I do this? And we begin to question ourselves. But eventually, you start to realize it is what it is. You have to come to the point where you didn't have any control over it. And things are going to happen as they happen in life. We cannot control everything. And so toward the end of this phase, or as you're going through this phase, one of the things I always used to tell people in my practice is, it's kind of the old fake it till you make it. You act as if life is okay, even though it kind of sucks at the moment, okay? So what you do is, when friends invite you out, you feel a little robotic. You don't feel like going out, but you make yourself go out. Remember, you do have to engage back in life to get through this process. Otherwise, you'll get destroyed. And so it's really important that you begin to do things. And I have a friend whose husband died. They were out on a bike ride, which they used to go on every morning, and he flipped off his bike, had a helmet and all the gear on, and he got a severe head trauma, was on life support, and eventually they took him off after a couple weeks and he died, but it was very sudden and unexpected. But she told me one of the things she decided to do was anytime anybody called her and invited her for anything, she was going, whether she felt like it or not. And I used to tell, my people that I saw in my practice, act in spite of how you feel, not because of how you feel. So you don't always want to give in to those feelings. It's easy to cocoon. It's easy to stay disengaged, but it's not good for you. And it's certainly not good for the people around you that care about you. So it's okay, kind of like a pity party. You can have it for an hour, but you don't stay there, okay? So you gotta act as if life is okay. And so the final phase is re-engaging with life. I have to look at my number of my slide here. Okay, so that's sort of where we go. In the final phase, that third phase he talks about, which is the new beginnings. That's the renewal. It's the re-engagement with life and people. You've accepted what has happened. You don't like it, you're not happy about it, but you accept it, it's okay, and life is okay. And you gradually begin to experience life and people in a more positive way. And what you begin to notice is you're starting to laugh, you're starting to smile, you're starting to enjoy things. And that's where you're transitioning. And again, it goes back and forth. Some days are good, some days are bad. But you just keep getting back on the horse and riding down that road. So you're going to reinvest in your life, and in life you have a sense of purpose. And you have more of that future orientation, a sense of hope. You're hopeful and optimistic, and you feel better about yourself and your life. I have a girlfriend who's 92. She's amazing and she's terrific. She's written several books. You may know her, Nancy Schlossberg. I don't know if any of you have read her work, but she's a pretty amazing girl. And one of the things that she wrote a little piece on her husband called Widow in Waiting. And her husband got cancer. They were, loved and always had a good marriage, good life, good family. And when he got sick, she was in the position to take care of him, and they would go back and forth, and eventually he ended up in hospice, but he was about to flunk hospice, and then the doctor wanted to do a surgery, so they got him out. But during this process, she started to get all anxious, right? That fear. What am I going to do? Will I ever be able to get him back in hospice if he needs hospice? Because with hospice, it's kind of time limited. The anticipation is you're not really, we're going to do palliative care, keep you comfortable, but no extraneous events, right? And so Nancy got very anxious, and she got a lot of help, which was good. That's what you need. I always tell people you can't do the journey alone. I do support groups, and I tell people, you need help, you need to reach out, and you need to practice getting help and allowing other people to help you. And I will tell you, for many of us women, that is a really hard thing to do, isn't it? And yet I think about it, many years ago, my friend Tony said to me, I would refuse any help from anybody. She said, you always do nice things for people. How does that make you feel? And I said, well, I feel pretty good when I do nice things for people. She said, why don't you give other people that same opportunity with you? And it was a good lesson. And those were wise words, my friend told me. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit just about change. And here is kind of sort of the summation, right? Beginnings are born out of the endings. So true. So what happens when life changes? I see my slide number here, okay. I think this is good. But we tend to cling to the past. Innately we tend to resist change, most of us. We focus on what we've lost, that rear view mirror there. The other thing that happens too is that sometimes we are very impatient about getting better. And we don't allow ourselves to get better. And sometimes other people think we should be better, we should do things, and they are prescriptive. So it's often we don't give ourselves the time we may need to heal. And not just time, but what resources do we need? And you often need additional help. And why do we cling to the past? Because that was certain, and right now we are faced with uncertainty. And that's scary. Because we don't know the next chapter, we don't know what's going to happen, and we're at a significant loss. And yet, none of us can move on to the next chapter of our life unless we turn the page to, so this is not with the last slide, but I want you to read it because I think
Could you read it for those of us?
Oh, okay, in the back, okay. I have the slide here, so let me read it. One reason people resist change is because they focus on what they have to give, up, not on what they have to gain. That's one of the reasons people resist change. Too many of us are not living our dreams because of our fears. So, I like this one. Bad attitude's like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you change it. So think about that next time. Okay, so, and you know, I used to tell the people that I saw in my practice, and I still do it myself, you know, first off, you have to trust yourself. You're going to be okay, and you are okay, even though right now it doesn't feel like it. That is okay, and you're okay, and you're going to be okay. And so you have to trust yourself, but beyond that, there is something bigger and something more. You may call it faith, you may call it God, you may call it the cosmos or the universe, it doesn't really matter, but something beyond yourself. You have to trust that life is going to be okay. That you're okay and life is going to be okay. And I think the biggest thing, and this is what is the catch for most of us, is are we going to open up and allow ourselves to experience the loss and accept the change that's probably inevitable. So, that's right. Wish you started today, right? Always a good thing. I have to see my slide number here. This is, we're okay. Okay, now I'm going to talk about losses. And this is relevant, I think, for all of us. What are the significant losses and sources of stress as we age? What are we scared about? Well, I'll tell you, everybody's scared of dementia, aren't you? Yeah. And I have a sister who is 2 years older than me, who's 15 years into early onset dementia. We had no family history of dementia. This came from left field, and I had no clue. I thought my sister was acting bizarre. She was young, early 50s. I thought she had a brain tumor. So, turns out she had dementia. And what my family went through, which is one of the reasons why I work for the Alzheimer's Association, what my family went through, because I was a therapist, but I didn't know that much about dementia, so I know a lot now. I'm happy, and I'm happy to share it with everybody else to help them too. But we're all scared of dementia. That cognitive or mental decline. Depression, some of us struggle with depression. That's an unpleasant way to live, isn't it? Physical limitations, even if you've had just something temporary, a knee replacement, a hip replacement, you fell and broke your wrist. These things are major setbacks for us. And none of us heal like we did when we were 25. So we have to be really patient, and we don't have a lot of time ahead of us, so we want to get on with life, right? So it's hard, those physical limitations, and that's scary. What if we're always that way? And I'm going to talk about that toward the end. The other thing is that loss of independence and autonomy. We want to be self-sufficient and independent and capable. And I'm going to tell every single one of you, if you haven't got help so far, learn to accept help. Help others, but learn to accept help from others. And the other thing is, what people really experience is loneliness and isolation. And all those things are part of the aging process, and they're all very difficult for us to deal with. And they're the most source of stress for us. And guess what? The greatest predictor of functional disability is, same for dementia, anybody know? What's the greatest predictor? Age! Yes! You're highly likely to experience adversity in some form during this aging process, be it a physical or cognitive decline, the loss of a loved one, or diminishing social networks. And many of you may have already experienced that. Why? Because friends get sick, and friends move away, and friends die. And so does our family. And those are hard things to deal with, but we have to. The other thing that many of us have to deal with is something called ageism. And I don't know if you know what that is, but you may have heard the term, but let me define it for you just in case. It's those biases and stereotypes and discrimination based on age. And it's not just how other people treat us and see us, it's how we see ourselves. And in more affluent countries, ageism is much more of a problem than in less affluent countries. We know that in America, don't we? But I want to tell you the good news I think about that is we are redefining and reimagining aging. And it is to our benefit. We're a generation of change. Remember, the civil rights movement and the women's movement and so many other great things have happened. We are all here making a better tomorrow for all of us, rest assured. So we have lots to be hopeful for and grateful for. So we don't always have a lot of control over the rate at which we age, but despite the limitations, we all recognize that we have some control over certain aspects of our life. One of the lectures that I do for the Alzheimer's Association is Healthy Living Body and Brain. It's really for healthy people to continue to be healthy. But you know, there is so much research. Even if you have genetic predispositions, that is only about 25% of the picture. You can actually influence things like diabetes, like heart disease, like cancer, just by things that we can control. What are some of those things? You all know what they are. They are diet. Now, I don't believe in perfection. I mean, you can have the sweets, but don't go overboard. I always say increase the stuff that's good for you and decrease the stuff not that's a problem for you. I mean, so we all know what foods are good for us. And I always tell people, you know, there's two reasons to eat. One is for nutrition and the other is for pleasure. Just don't overdo the pleasure principle. So, let's see, where am I? So anyway, and the other thing is, and then of course exercise, but I want to tell you something else that is so important, and I hope all of you do this as much as you can. And I'm pretty biased. I think anybody over the age of 50 should not live alone, and I know I get a lot of backlash for that. And the reason is because we know what happens in the brain when you have face-to-face, not Zoom, not Skype, not FaceTime, but when you have face-to-face contact with people, it lights up your brain. And social engagement gives you, and lifelong learning gives you the ability to develop neuroplasticity. I don't know if you know what neuroplasticity is, but it's making new neurons, getting your brain, getting it going and keeping it going, and diet, exercise, social engagement, and lifelong learning. And those are 4 things that everyone in this group, I hope you're doing now, and you continue to do till your last breath, if you can. So take in the good stuff. So what about this positive or resilient aging? Well, of course, what it is to me, it's a quality of life. And I deal with couples that have, dementia. One partner has dementia, and you can always have a quality of life in a marriage, even if your partner has dementia, and you can help give your partner who may have dementia quality of life. So what is resilience? It's called positive aging or resilient aging. It's some form of adversity that results in a positive outcome. It's that inner strength that we build. You know what they say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but some days it's hard to hang on. And the question is it innate or can we learn it? Well, there's just some people that are naturally resilient. They're upbeat, they're high energy, seem like they always say the right thing at the right time, and life doesn't knock them over. And yet, there's other people that struggle a little bit more with that. But you can learn it. And I want to tell you one thing. Just the fact that you showed up today makes you a positive ager. So thank you for coming, number one. But you can maintain a high level of functioning regardless of any adversity. Robert Louis Stevenson said, life does not consist of having a good hands at cards, but learning to play a poor hand well. And resilience, we talk about cognitive reserve. What is cognitive reserve? Cognitive reserve is building up your brain to keep it going and to keep it functioning through diet, exercise, social engagement, and lifelong learning. And so it is with building up that reserve for us, because we have to plan and anticipate, what will I do when this happens again? Because it's going to happen again. So somehow life's going to knock you over, and if your response is the same, you do what you've always done, you get what you always want. So change may be in order. So you want to build that reserve, And I want to tell you one thing, that of course time dwindles as we age. We have more years behind us than we do ahead of us. So take your time and measure your time very well and do what brings a smile to your face and a sense of joy in your heart. And resilience is that inner strength, but it's inside of us. Now, other people can kind of shore us up along the way in life, but they can't give us resilience. That's only the gift you can give yourself. And you know, the Chinese have a symbol for crisis, right? Crisis is the transitions we talked about earlier. And in Chinese, it means two things. It means danger and opportunity, right? Because it's scary. Everything is like life as we knew it is totally changed. And yet it gives us that opportunity for growth. An opportunity to come back and to build better and stronger. You know, they talk about the yin and the yang. My mom, who is 90 and a pretty sharp little cookie, and she's little, she's only 14. She's, you know, she's kind of, my friends all call her the Energizer Bunny. I mean, she's very upbeat, she's a lot of fun, she walks every day and she keeps on going. And she sometimes gets a little down on herself because she'll occasionally have a pity party because my mom's 90, my dad's been gone for 31 years, and she's never remarried, and so she gets a little lonely, and so she feels bad. And I tell my mom all the time, you know, you can't have one without the other. You know, you can't feel happy all the time. If, you know, the yin and the yang, which is, you know, the duality of the opposites, you know, you can't have happiness and experience happiness unless you've had sadness, okay? You can't experience joy unless you've had disappointments. You can't experience good unless you have experienced evil or seen evil. So the world is not made up of one or the other, but rather both. And let's go here. I love this. Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Mark Twain. Anyway, so, okay, I think I got another one here. So anyway, so how do we develop that resilience as we age? Well, you want to maintain a sense of hope and optimism. And how do you do that? You know, sometimes you have to see the rainbow that will come out after the rainy day. You need to look for the silver lining. And I will tell you that I think one of the best ways to do that, and there's a lot of research on that, is gratitude. Every day, and even in your darkest moments, find something to be grateful for. And one of the ways that you do this, if you do a journal, it draws your attention, it puts it down on paper. Also, journaling is also good for your pity parties. So if you're having a pity party, I used to do this myself. You know, when I was in college, I would, you know, those days, you know, you used to write letters, right? Who knows that? Everybody's got email now and text each other. But, you know, long distance was very expensive and I didn't have a lot of money. So I would write letters to my friends. And of course, I would write about whatever was going on in my life and probably something good and something not so good. Then I would get another letter back from them. Are you okay? And I'm thinking, what did I write in my last letter? But, you know, I used to love to write letters, and it was probably very cathartic, but it's a way to let go of emotions. I said sometimes when things are spinning around so much in your head, it's good to just put it to paper. But it's also good to notice and appreciate and value what you have in your life and who you have in your life. So gratitude is something that's so important for resilience. The other thing is try new things. One of the things I do that is just fun, it's adult Barbies, is I teach jewelry making classes, and I made all my jewelry, okay, but it's fun. I tell my students, it's adult Barbies. It is so much fun. I just love it. But learn something new. I love that people come in our age group and they're learning this new skill that they know nothing about. And by the way, I only teach beginners. I don't do the advanced group because you know what they want? Well, Louise, how come you don't do it this way? Or I do it this way. I want the people that know nothing. And you will make professional pieces by the time you're done with my class. And it's fun. So that's my joy. And I love to see what people create because people are sort of a clean slate. It's like, I think it's like what little kids experience. You know, they'll try anything. And I tell them in my classes, hey, anything goes. Any colors go. This is art. It's not jewelry making, it's art. So it reflects you, so do whatever you like. Somebody else doesn't like it, it's their issue, not yours. So you like it, that's good enough. So the other thing is social connections, as I mentioned earlier, are so important. So make the effort. Invite others. Join groups and organizations. Volunteer. By the way, any of you are interested in Alzheimer's and dementia, I have to give a shout out to the Alzheimer's Association because they are one of the best in terms of their training program. You do not have to know anything about dementia. You do not have to have an advanced degree. They do an excellent job of training people to do groups and also training people to do talks for them. So they have an excellent training program. And accept social invitations. Take a class, you get that neuroplasticity. You're learning something new, it stimulates your brain. You know, after the age of 60, the creative part of the brain, they have watched this on fMRIs, brain scans. People, when they're doing creative things after the age of 60, that part of their mind is just, brain is just lit up. And I think that's for a couple reasons. One is we're kind of mostly done with our careers, are pretty well established, and it's kind of a no-brainer, we can do it. The other thing is usually we're done raising our families and stressing about our kids going to college or worried about what they're going to do, hopefully. And so it's usually a more time that's relaxed in your life. And the only way you can create is if you're relaxed. You cannot create on demand and in a stressful situation. So now is a time for relaxation and enjoyment. And again, maintain your positive health and well-being through diet, exercise, socialization, and the lifelong learning. And so increase those social connections. And you know, there's an old Yiddish proverb, we plan and God laughs. So the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, don't they? So do the best you can and accept that you cannot control everything. I used to work with a gal that would be a busybody around the office. She's like my sister. And she would just be nosing around and being upset about everybody else. And I said, is this something you have control over? And she'd say, no. I said, then let it go. No control, let it go. You don't need a busybody. You're not their supervisor. You don't have to correct you. So just take care of yourself, do your own job. Well, they're calling in sick. Well, I said, well, if you're sick, then call in sick. But if you don't have any control over that, it's not your issue. You're not the employer. But it's hard sometimes to set our parameters where we're not occupied with everybody else and what everybody else is doing. And I love the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom, oh yes, the wisdom to know the difference. So I just want to wrap up with one last thing. You know, when young people have a terrible traumatic injury, I used to work on more intensive care. I was a medical social worker early in my career, and you know, people would have spinal cord injuries and head trauma, and they were young, and it was very sad. But you know, one of the things that we do with young people that have disabilities, traumatic injuries that result in disabilities, is we put all our energy into resilience training, into making this the biggest challenge, something that they can do, and we give them all kinds of assisted devices to get them there so that they can live the best and fullest life they can. And yet, you know, it's interesting, it's very opposite for us seniors, because we don't want to do the cane, we don't want to do the wheelchair. But you know, if you could get around a lot quicker and easier with a cane or a wheelchair, wouldn't that be in your best interest? And that can expand your horizons. But what we often teach them is how to cope, not how to transcend. And we need to get people to expand their life, and for you to continue to expand yours. And I'm not going to say any more because you've probably heard enough from me. Let me see what other slides I have to show you. So, go for it, gang. Go stretch yourself and have a good life. Thanks. I'm here if you have any questions or comments.